Sfisa, good afternoon to you. I think before we start, let's just get a sense of how important the hospitality industry is to the South African economy, and it is one that you'll tell us is really being battered.
Hi, Jeremy. Absolutely. I mean, sure. Depends whichever lens you want to look at it. The liquor industry as well as the tobacco industry, I think combined make up about 170 billion of our GDP. And if you look at just fast food, for example, restaurants, in 2018, they made top line revenue of about 500 billion. So that's quite a sizable market in terms of the South African economy, and particularly, of course, in their contribution to the tax base. And so I think a lot of the growing calls now are also on the back of the fact that a lot of those industries are labor intensive, and they tend to attract a lot of physical warm bodies. And so I think also the thinking is around the fact that if those businesses don't survive, it's going to already worsen a terrible employment context from a South African point of view.
So how then do you find the best balance between right to trade on the one hand, to stay afloat, but also the urgent need to contain the spread of the virus?
No, I mean, so these conversations are certainly not mutually exclusive. And I think the challenge that we've tended to find, in the South African context versus other, developed economies is that there's been both, the right level of fiscal capacity to be able to support businesses through the with while then ensuring that people's health outcomes are protected. There tends to be almost a direct correlation, actually, with health outcomes and the economic output. And so whichever way you look at it is that you can't focus on the economy when there are not going to be people running that economy, as well as understanding that you also need to have the infrastructure readily in place for an economic upturn. And so I think it's certainly now we've got to look at South Africa in a context of health outcomes first. We also understand the fact that, this kind of issue with COVID-19 has resulted in, for example, a lot of, illicit trade taking place. And illicit trade has tended already before COVID-19 to make up about 35% of the market of cigarettes and alcohol. And so this already then results in the fact that there may be counterfeit products that may also be worse for people's health outcomes. And so already those are some of the things that we need to think about in terms of people's vulnerability and vulnerability in the context of the spreading virus.
It's a very difficult decision to make. At what point, particularly when it comes to the restaurant trade, to taverns, do we reach a fulcrum? Do we reach a crossroads where it's going to become almost impossible to reopen because of cash flow?
Sure. I mean, so I think there's certainly a lot of the guidance we're getting now from the president is the fact that they're going to work on a phased-in approach for some of these sectors. I think also, I mean, if we've seen, I'll just make an example, we've seen how some of the liquor outlets have gone and made sanitizers, right, because they've got the alcohol itself. And so I think there's certainly ways in which government can work with these sectors in finding ways in which they can be productive in a constrained economy. And so that's what I'm saying is that there's certainly ways in which we can start to look at various pockets of the economy that can alter their productive capacity towards helping with the COVID-19 pandemic, while ensuring that they are economically active and ensuring also that then ultimately their people are kept in jobs and they're earning salaries. So it's certainly, I think, going to have to be a combination of many things, but it's certainly not just open the market and let businesses continue working as if we're in a normal environment.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Economist Sfiso Skandana, thank you very much for joining us via Skype. This is ENCA.